Most people don't realize this, but stress has an ego, and it loves to boss people around. It whispers things like, "You're failing," "You're not enough," "You can't handle this," until suddenly stress isn't just something they feel, it becomes who they think they are. And that's the lie this video is here to break. Because stress doesn't get to rename you, redefine you, or rewrite God's purpose for your life. Not today, not anymore. He sees it all the time. People who feel overwhelmed at work, stuck in burnout recovery, tangled in anxiety relief practices that don't stick, or drifting into an identity crisis because emotional exhaustion has pushed them past their limits. Some are dealing with spiritual burnout, others with healthcare burnout, nurses, doctors, caregivers who pour out until there's nothing left. And somewhere along the way, they start believing stress is their personality. But here's the counterintuitive twist. Stress isn't a sign of weakness. It's a signal that your identity has been hijacked, and it's time to reclaim your mind. So today, he's inviting you into something deeper, something that blends faith and mental health, spiritual healing and practical stress management, Christian motivation with real-world strategy. This isn't another "just breathe and move on" message. This is about overcoming stress at the root, receiving God's peace in the middle of pressure, and learning how to stop negative thoughts before they drag you into doubt. If you've been craving Christian encouragement and a path back to mental clarity, emotional healing, and your true identity, you're exactly where you need to be. And this journey starts right now. Understanding how stress tries to redefine your identity. He often notices that stress has a sneaky way of slipping into someone's identity, almost like an uninvited guest who starts rearranging the furniture. It begins with small thoughts. I'm tired. I'm overwhelmed. I can't keep up. Before long, these temporary feelings start shaping how a person sees themselves. This is where emotional exhaustion and burnout recovery become more than physical. They become spiritual battles too. And when someone feels overwhelmed at work or swallowed by routine, they may not realize how quickly stress tries to rewrite the story they live by. He's seen people, professionals, students, parents, even pastors, start describing themselves through the lens of anxiety instead of God's purpose. Stress convinces them they've lost their edge, their focus, their peace. They start saying things like, "I'm just an anxious person," or "I'm always burnt out," as if these conditions define them forever. But these phrases are symptoms of an identity crisis, where doubt chips away at confidence. In moments like these, faith under pressure reveals how much stress and faith collide in daily life. A simple example, someone struggling with nurse burnout might begin believing they're permanently drained, when in reality, they're just spiritually dehydrated and in need of Christian encouragement. When stress starts taking over, he advises small steps like journaling 3 truths about who God says you are, or listening to a short Christian devotional each morning to reclaim your identity. These tiny anchors help stop negative thoughts before they gain momentum. And once someone starts recognizing the difference between who they are and what they feel, the next step becomes clear, learning how stress gains so much influence in the first place. Why stress feels so powerful and how it gains control. He often explains that stress feels powerful because it strikes at moments when people are least grounded. When someone is juggling deadlines, family pressures, or spiritual burnout, their mind becomes a wide open door for worry to walk right in. Stress loves chaos. It thrives when someone feels disconnected from purpose or too tired to think clearly. That's when emotional exhaustion becomes more than fatigue. It becomes a voice trying to narrate your identity. And regardless of whether you're dealing with healthcare burnout, financial worry, or inner doubt, stress always uses the same tactic: distraction. He's seen how even strong believers start drifting when life gets busy. Instead of leaning into God's peace, they lean into autopilot. Instead of seeking spiritual healing, they seek quick fixes that don't last. Stress wins when someone forgets the power they carry. For example, when someone spends the day rushing from task to task without pausing to breathe, pray, or regain mental clarity, stress fills the silence with anxiety. It whispers lies that feel true simply because the person is too tired to challenge them. He often recommends a grounding routine, something simple, realistic, and doable, even for someone overwhelmed at work. One example is the 60-second reset. Breathe deeply for 20 seconds, speak one scripture-based affirmation for 20, and release one negative thought for the remaining 20. It's tiny, but over time it helps reclaim your mind and stop negative thoughts before they become habits. And once someone understands how stress gains control, they're ready for something even deeper, recognizing the moment stress crosses the line and starts reshaping their spiritual identity. Recognizing when stress has crossed into identity-level damage. He often says the real danger isn't feeling stressed. It's when stress starts speaking for you. When someone wakes up already overwhelmed, dreads the day before it even begins, or constantly feels like they're failing, that's a sign stress has stepped out of its lane. At this point, burnout recovery isn't just about resting. It's about reclaiming your identity from the lies stress repeats. Whether it's spiritual burnout or daily anxiety, this stage feels like a fog settling over someone's mind, muffling their confidence and clarity. You'll notice it in phrases people start using without thinking. I'm just tired all the time. I can't handle pressure. I'm not good enough. Or maybe I'm just meant to live stressed. These aren't personality traits. They're symptoms of emotional exhaustion shaping how someone interprets their entire life. He's seen healthcare burnout turn confident doctors into shadows of themselves, and overwhelming stress turn faithful believers into people who question their own spiritual strength. This is where faith and mental health become deeply intertwined, and where Christian encouragement becomes vital. He often gives the example of a man who thought he simply had no energy left, when in reality, he'd allowed stress to convince him that exhaustion was his identity. Once they worked together on simple practices, speaking scripture aloud in the morning, walking for 10 minutes without his phone, and replacing one negative thought a day, he began healing from burnout and reclaiming his mind. And the moment someone recognizes this shift in themselves, they're ready for the next step, learning how to dismantle the false identity stress has built. Stress built. He often teaches that dismantling the identity stress created isn't about fighting harder. It's about seeing clearly. Stress builds its false identity brick by brick: rushed mornings, constant pressure, unresolved doubt, and the belief that exhaustion is normal. Over time, these bricks stack up until a person can't tell where stress ends and they begin. But when someone pauses long enough to question those patterns, something powerful happens. They start recognizing what's true and what's been fabricated by emotional exhaustion. He encourages practical steps that feel small but work deeply. For example, listing 3 moments from the day where you acted out of fear or pressure, then rewriting each one through the lens of faith and purpose. A nurse battling burnout might realize she said yes to another shift because she felt guilty, not called. A father dealing with anxiety relief might see he avoided a conversation out of fear, not wisdom. This kind of awareness starts cracking the false identity stress built, one lie at a time. He's also found that strategic spiritual practices accelerate this process. A short Christian devotional before bed, a 5-minute prayer walk, or even a single verse repeated during moments of pressure can weaken stress's grip. These practices help someone reclaim their identity by replacing noise with God's peace and mental clarity. And once these cracks appear, they create space for something even more transformative: the rebuilding of the person God actually designed them to be. Rebuilding your true identity with faith, purpose, and peace. He often reminds people that rebuilding their true identity isn't a race, it's a return. Stress may have knocked things out of place, but it never destroyed who they are. When someone begins healing from burnout and embracing spiritual encouragement, they discover that God's purpose didn't disappear during the hard seasons. It was simply buried under noise. This rebuilding stage is where clarity begins to return and where inner peace starts feeling possible again. And surprisingly, it begins with small, intentional choices. He recommends practical actions that anchor a person back to their true self. For example, creating a purpose playlist with Christian inspiration that speaks life into them during morning routines, or starting a weekly faith reset where they spend 30 minutes reading books like The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry or Battlefield of the Mind. These practices remind someone that they aren't defined by anxiety, healthcare burnout, or emotional exhaustion, but by the strength, grace, and calling God placed in them. Even 5 minutes of stillness can help reclaim your mind and rebuild confidence. He's seen incredible transformations when people begin speaking with intention instead of stress. Replacing "I'm overwhelmed" with "I'm guided" or "I can't handle this" with "God is with me" changes the internal narrative. These tiny shifts open the door to deeper spiritual healing and a renewed sense of identity. And once someone starts rebuilding who they truly are, the final step becomes natural, learning how to live from this identity every day, no matter what challenges try to rise up against them. At the end of this journey, he wants the listener to remember one thing: stress doesn't get the last word, you do. And more importantly, God does everything discussed here leads to one powerful truth. You can reclaim your identity, your peace, and your purpose, no matter how heavy life has felt lately, but knowledge only becomes transformation when it's used. So he asks, which part of this message hit closest to home? Where can you start today, right now, to stop stress from defining you? He invites the listener to pause and reflect. Are you ready to break the cycle of emotional exhaustion? Ready to stop negative thoughts before they take root? Ready to rebuild the identity God designed for you? These aren't small questions. They're invitations. Invitations to change your life, not someday, but today. And if you felt even a small spark of hope or clarity during this message, that spark is your sign to act. If this video helped you, encouraged you, or reminded you of who you truly are, then don't walk away without taking the next step. Subscribe to the channel, tap that notification bell, and stay connected to messages that help you walk in God's peace, faith, identity, and purpose. There's so much more ahead, and you don't have to walk it alone.